One of the things I wanted to really dig into today, because it's something we all skirt around permanently, right? But the change function, aka the L&D function, I believe has a change problem. Okay. And they're not outside it, they're actually part of the change system. So we've seen a lot of very interesting behaviours over the past 6 months as the whole of the world's got more risky. And buyers per se, because of that external risk, um, are buying less and buying slower. So of course L&D are asked to step up. But you've got a really good recent example about someone who wants to buy something, but you've told them it won't work.
So you
Tell
want
me
me to
more
go
about that one.
and so let me so we'll caveat it by the when Mark says it won't work occasionally because I get over enthusiastic. They may find it a little bit difficult to hear, but at
I
the
was
end of
going
the
to say,
day,
did you actually tell them it wasn't going to work as well?
oh, of course,
Good.
I have a strange moral compass. I cannot sell something that won't work. Just drives me insane. However, so what we're confronted with, and we see this a lot, and some of this comes back to the conversations you and I are having. We get asked regularly to come in and say to people, this is how we can help. But they haven't defined the problem. What they've come to us is sometimes our salespeople aren't closing enough. Can you do negotiation training? No, that's not the problem. Can we understand the problem more? And with this client, to be fair to them, we've understood the client, the situation more. And quite a lot of it is a mindset issue. It's not a skills issue. And I keep trying to explain, I can give all of the skills, but unless we can get them to the point of, I want to do it, there's no amount of training that I'm going to do that's going to make a difference. And they've gone, no, we'll tell them. Because we ran successful, we ran successful programs in the past. We told them how to qualify. We told them how to negotiate. We told them how to run this campaign. And even though I would say to them, did it work? And they'd go, not as well as we'd liked. I've struggled to get them to recognize you're solving the wrong problem. It's not a skills problem. There may be skills lacking, but the conversations you and I have, it's a people problem. It's a will problem.
Right, so this is fascinating. So you've got a group of people who you'd have thought their whole reason to be would be to make it all better, right? You know, it's a bit like you've got a group of students, you're a teacher. If at the end of the semester they're not having learned anything and what they're doing hasn't changed, you know, your value as a teacher isn't at that, you know, you didn't get them through the exams, you didn't get them wherever they needed to go.
Right.
And
Can I stop you there? Can I stop you there?
yeah,
Because you said something that I see all the time, though. Because you used the teacher example, and then you
yes.
said, I get you through exams. Right? So we have an awful lot of people who go, I just need to prove that they've remembered at a set point in time what it is we've taught them. Job done. So
Excellent.
there's nothing about them doing anything after.
No, and that's like the crux of the problem, because remembering when you're asked about something is completely different than executing it in real life. So that said, having done a chemistry A level back in the day, you had to execute stuff in real life. I couldn't just write it in a book. I physically had to cook the cake, as it were, or do all of the what's it experiments. And it's a completely different type of stress, actually, because you're having to do it, not having to write it or having to remember it. You literally have to do the investigations and do the stuff. And they're very, very different skills. Um, and this is what's fascinating. So if we're looking at organizations and we're going, there's a huge difference between can I write the right answer or can I physically do it when it matters?
Oh yeah, and you've explained, you've opened it up. My wife is a classic example. Fortunately, she's not watching this, but I may show her the recording. So she proudly, no, not proudly, she tells me she was really bad at exams. The one A level she did really well in was what I called cookery. I'm sure it had a far better name
Home
because,
economics.
well, yeah, but it was beyond that at A
It
level
wasn't. Oh, okay. Yeah.
because she had to go and cook a three-course meal. So
Oh,
she was given the ingredients.
yeah.
It's a bit like Bake Off and all of those things. Now go and do it. And because she naturally understands, all through the learning process, how to put the things together, she did really well in that. It wasn't an academic exercise, it was a practical exercise, interestingly enough, under the same pressure that you have when you run a dinner party, because the guests are coming at 8 o'clock and you've started cooking at 6 o'clock. So you want them to eat at 8:30, not 10 o'clock, and you don't want it ready at 5 o'clock because it'll be cold unless it's designed to be cold. She thrived in that environment. And I found that really interesting. And it actually went on within her career because she is a hands on practical person, not a theoretical person. So often, by her own admission, she doesn't understand all of the theory behind what she does, but she's learnt enough about it to know how to do it and then build on that intuitively from there. Just like a great salesperson, coming back to what I spend my life doing. They don't always understand why it works. They've seen it, they've used it, they've reacted to it, they've built on it. It's the doing that makes the difference.
And that comes back to a real thing, because if it's the doing that makes the difference, are we suggesting then that the measurement of what the outcome should be is not do they remember it, is that they do it when it matters?
Um, yeah, duh.
So that said, though, I don't know about you. I've never seen an RFP or any of these training things which come out, which actually says the test of whether this has worked or not is if someone does it when it matters. And salespeople, let's be fair, so being in sales is really odd. It's one of the most stressful things you will ever do, especially if your quota's down and you're not hitting your numbers. And secondly, usually no one else is in the room when you do it, except you and the person you're selling to. So no one knows if you're doing it or not.
Yeah, I mean, there are things that we can track and more, but fundamentally, you're 100% correct. But I'm going to go earlier than that.
Go on then.
Especially if we are dealing, and there's lots of stuff on places like LinkedIn, where all of the world's greatest experts congregate. There's talk about, why are you dealing with a sales enablement person who's never held a quota? How would they know what good looks like? And whether you agree or disagree, that there's an interesting thought there that says, what is it you're trying to get people to do? Have you defined not the skills, but the actions, the behaviors that drive to an outcome? And it's the outcome I can be looking at. And the outcome isn't make a sale, because if only selling was as simple as answer the phone and you go, how many do you want? Let's agree the price. I mean, in a transactional world, that's great. But, most of us in the B2B world, we do not live in a transactional world. In fact, we live in a far more complex world than we've lived in for a while. And fear, in our buyers, as you said at the beginning, is immense. No one's defining clearly, spending enough time defining what is it we want them to do.
And I think that's really interesting, because if we go back to where we started, which is L&D and looking at establishing behaviour change, not can I write the right answer, do I do it? Then for me, in my world of neuroscience, they are showing exactly the same resistance as the people they're trying to get their behaviours to change in, because they're very happy sat in their little world of this is what we've always done and we've always looked at it this way. Very much like your customer when you went, well, we've given them the skills. That's my bit over with. But if you know that that's not actually making anything change, you have to change what you're doing. But changing what you're doing, exactly like those people, get fear, status pressure, sunk cost defense, social proof dynamics, exactly like that salesperson. So how do we start to talk to them differently? How do we look at L&D and go, guys, to use your Einstein quote, if you keep doing what you're always doing, you're going to stay there, but you're actually part of the problem because you're not prepared to do anything differently or even measure at anything differently.
Well, I mean, we have to sell to them. We have to open their minds. And this is part of why you and I are doing this.
Yeah.
It all starts with a change and this is the change in their mindset that says, what does success look like? So as long as success is measured by how many people attend the course, so if they've got an LMS and it's, can I track, I've bought this learning library from a company. There's 27 courses on there, and 20% of our people are doing all 27 courses, and 10% of our people are doing 3 of our courses, or whatever it may be. And if that's all they're measuring, then they're not actually open to changing in their mindsets what it is we're asking people to do. So
Totally.
we have to go and start by going, and this is the uncomfortable conversation. What are you trying to achieve? Because even learning and development as a phraseology is sort of old thinking, because it isn't learning and development. It is, I don't know, maybe they should be doing things better department.
Well, for me, it's behavioural change. It's actually actionable. It's behavioural change. Did someone's behaviour change or not? Right. And the thing is, what I'm seeing the same reactions in L&D professionals when they're saying, well, we've done what we always do, it's fine. Right. So you're behaving exactly like those salespeople who can just write it down and can't actually go and do it. But it's a really hard thing to face, right? It's like any change. So I've done, and I'm going to start calling it habitual change because adoption and change management's done my head in as a word for years.
Absolutely, yeah.
If you're
But
going to
can I stop you? Can you dig into that adoption bit? Because when we hear change management, I've been involved in programs, where there's a change management team working alongside us. And what do? We do what we've always done. So we communicate the why, and they do a fantastic job. And there's some rah-rah video from the CEO. The world is changing. We have to change accordingly. And we've got this wonderful program to support you. And then that gets cascaded down so that the CEO cascades the message down to the CRO, who cascades it down to the SVPs, who cascades it down to the regional directors, blah, 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 blah. And everyone goes, yeah, fantastic. And we're starting on the 1st of June. And then we run the program, and then we celebrate the successes. Well, what are the successes? Typically, I am a cynic, the pictures at the end of the course with thumbs up and smiley faces and, oh, it was wonderful. That's behavioral change. That's done in software, and we can say that 27% of people are now adopting our tool. They're using it every so often. Success. Why do you hate the word adoption?
Well, because it's everything that's been used around adoption and change. Basically, if that was a sales motion, I've got a load of customers who are aware and interested this thing we're doing might be good for them. They haven't bought it. They just know about it. And they've read the brochure and they've gone, yeah, okay. I've seen your demo, tried your demo. They still haven't bought it. Right? Because
bought it here is I haven't really bought into using it. So yeah, I know it's there.
So I'm not actually doing it, but I think it's all very interesting. I've done your training and that's it. But what you haven't done is your brain hasn't bought the fact it's got to do something different to actually use or do the thing, right? So everyone knows, and it's all this, that, and the other. And I'll always bring it back to this. If you cannot prove that your adoption program literally releases neurotransmitters and makes people do an action differently and keeps them doing it, your brain doesn't rewire anything. It doesn't learn anything. It doesn't change anything. Okay? It literally sees it, goes, yeah, fine, could be interested. No, I'm not. I'm going off to do something else. Because that's not how your brain rewires change. You want people to do something even unconsciously. So it's a bit like going back to driving a car, right? We get people to lesson 2 or 3. You wouldn't do a driving test at lesson 2 or 3, and you're definitely not safe on the road. But adoption gets lesson 2 and 3. Hey, I've read the manual, I've done this, I'm driving, right? And then the real world hits and they go, it was easier to walk, or it was easier to get the train, or it was easier to do this. Because what you haven't done is gone through the whole process of wiring that into an actual behaviour, which stays there and stays over time. And that's just one brain. To be fair, what you want is all the brains doing it. So you actually have to look at how the group does this as well. Okay, but we've been back to this. And this is coming back. I want to bring this firmly back to these people who keep doing anything the way they've always done it, aren't changing anything. They're not changing anything about themselves, and they're not changing anything about the people they're buying stuff for. All they're doing is buying you 2 driving lessons, right? And we all know you wouldn't go out and head down the motorway or drive all the way to Scotland on 2 driving lessons. But somehow we seem to believe that's adoption.
So my failure then is what you're saying of when I'm talking to my clients, whether they are obviously L&D or they are surreptitiously L&D, but they basically are the people who own the program that's supposed to get salespeople to do something differently.
Yeah.
I've failed to get them to properly understand what needs to be done in order to get people to do something differently. So what then happens is I think I'm doing a good program, but we're missing some of these fundamental steps that you're talking about. And what we get is what we've always got, which is nice backgrounds, some banners, maybe a league table, but no change.
They're staying where they always have. It feels safe. Like the salespeople they want to change, right? It's safer to stay where I know, right? And this resistance they have to doing something differently isn't actually conscious. It's in their brains. It's like, well, if for 30 years I've done this the same way and I'm still alive and I'm still working, I'm still functioning, the brain goes, yeah, it can't be that important. Okay. So when someone comes and presents something different to you, you'll sort of listen, and then your brain will go, oh, I wouldn't do that because it's predicting. When we've done this over here before, it was all okay. So it's far easier to stay here. It's far easier to stay where we're safe and comfortable because I've still got my job. I didn't get fired. Nothing nasty happened. So the brain, like it does the salespeople, is specifically programmed to keep you where and in what you've done before. So in the essence, you're behaving exactly like your salespeople are. It's happier and easier to stay here. I didn't get fired.
So I should just take the money, really.
Yes, you want to be ethical about it, which is where you started at the beginning. I mean, to be fair though, Mark, you're talking about a lot of all the other companies. And that's the other thing, because, you go and pitch for business, 5 companies or 3, there's 3 people, 2 people are saying, this is what we've always done, we'll keep doing it. 1 person says something differently. Your brain will go, well, those 2 people are telling me what I want to hear, that what works, so we'll just do that. And you will disregard, because it is different, the new process. So, I think if L&D want to really, or whoever's buying, change for other people, the first thing you have to do is understand why you don't want to do anything different than you've done before.
Okay, because we said, look, what we're talking about is the competitive advantage of leading change from the front. So what you're basically saying to me is, okay, all of those people hopefully were listening to this or watching this, you've got to go and ask yourself a fundamental question.
Yes.
Do you want to do something different? If the answer's no, then either expect the outcome that you've always got, or what? Can I convince someone to do something different? Can I, how can I show them? What can we show them that makes it
In
more
the end,
than Mark and Ginny talking?
yeah, in the end, they've got, okay, first of all, you have to be curious enough to try to look at something in a different way. So you're going to have to stop your own thinking, okay? Because people will think and they'll listen, they'll have a couple of conversations. Push comes to shove, they'll always go back and buy what they've always bought. So what you've got to recognize about your own brain is that that's just making you feel comfortable. If you actually want to deliver measurable change, it's what you said at the beginning, which is the change, you are delivering not just training, but something that makes a difference in the field, as in when someone's not being watched and when they are out on their own or they're having that conversation, you have to be brave enough to do that test. Is it really working? Am I measuring not likes, but actual difference in behavior and numbers?
Okay. And something you said on previous times, and you just triggered a thought, is it's how you behave under pressure. So what we're saying to the audience who are listening to this is not only have you got to say, I believe it, but when you're sitting in front of the chief people officer or the CEO, are you going to still say, this is what we ought to do? Because if you're going to, I'm going to use a terrible phrase, if you're going to cave at that meeting, then you haven't actually accepted you've got to change. And that's hard for these people. I get it. All of the organizational politics that's around, all of the fear that's around. How do we quantify when talking to them that what we're saying is not just Ginny's scientific understanding and Mark's, let's admit it, ability to bullshit in a loud shirt?
The thing is, this is what we have is logical scientific evidence. Okay. Problem is with logical scientific evidence, it is logical. And what the logical scientific evidence says is people make decisions emotionally on what they're comfortable with. Right? So what we've come to realize is the people who are buying this are making comfortable, predictable decisions on what they're comfortable with, not going, I am behaving like my salespeople. So this thing is you have to lead it. You have to sit there and go, if I really want to make a difference, and it probably won't be for everyone, okay? Pity, but there we go. If I really want to make a difference, I have to literally change how I think about what it is we are doing to our people. And I have to recognize as well, I'm a person, right? And I will be suffering the same things. I once did a large deployment within Microsoft, and it was a board sign-off thing. So we're at the board, UK board in Microsoft, and there's the chap who's running it and his senior management team. Literally to a person, every single person on that senior management team said, "Oh, do it to my people. I haven't got time." Right.
Yeah.
And like, do it to my people. I haven't got time to do this. I'm not going to change. And the chap who's in charge then went, no, you do it first. He said, because if you don't do it, you don't know how hard it is for all the rest of your teams to do it. So you will have no empathy and no understanding of the timescale it actually takes to do it. Right? And he said, you do it first because you have to understand what they have to go through. So What I believe we'll be asking people to do is, as a buyer, as an L&D person, are you brave enough to choose what works over what's familiar? Because it's going to be uncomfortable, because it's going to be hard, because you're going to not want to do it. That is exactly the same feelings and exactly the same processes those salespeople will go through if they are truly and really going to do the behaviour change you want. And in the end, everyone wins. The business
Okay,
gets more
so
sales. What's it?
I can visualize that in as much as, so we've talked about the 3 steps people got to do, for this change, but I want to just focus on 2, which is selection and transmission.
Yes.
So, for any of the people who've done leadership training, management training, and organizations that say, we want to have a coaching culture. What we're basically saying is, well, look, before you try and get everybody to have a coaching culture, you've got to have a coaching culture. So you as an L&D person, or your boss or your boss's boss, unless they've selected that behavior, and having selected that behavior, I will properly coach my team. And I will have one-to-ones, and I won't cancel them at the last minute. And then they've transmitted that to their peers and below to say, this is what I am doing and this is why it works. You get no chance of then actually making that live and become habitual, because so again, if I as an L&D person want to move from learning but not doing, I have to stop telling everyone I went on a course, and I have to start telling everybody what I did differently and how I continue to do it differently. Is that what we're saying here?
Yeah, because there's something very interesting that happens in the brain, which is, believe it or not, if you're doing something and it feels hard or difficult, it wakes up its neuroplasticity. Okay, it suddenly goes, oh, I've got to do something. And interesting, you can see this all the time at the moment. People keep using AI for the wrong thing, right? Okay, they use it because they use it in situations they're afraid. So if I've got to write something and I'm not particularly happy with how I write, or I've got an emotional challenge for it, I ask AI. AI is the worst thing to ask about something like that. AI is a data expert. It's not an emotional expert, okay? But because it's there, it's easier to ask because it feels difficult. And because it feels difficult, that's exactly how your brain has to feel before it starts to move into neuroplasticity world, right? It doesn't want to sit there feeling comfortable. It never sits there. If it feels comfortable, nothing's changing. If it feels awkward and uncomfortable and you get it wrong, your brain is undergoing neuroplasticity. So if you haven't made yourself feel uncomfortable at least once a week, you're not doing your brain any good, but you're definitely not changing anything.
Okay. And what you said about AI, again, I find interesting, in as much as, forget the AI bit, but the fact that people are hiding behind AI, which is a bit like hiding behind skills training.
Totally.
We told them how to negotiate. They know the theory. And I was talking to you earlier, and again, I was talking to, I advised some startups, and I was talking to the founder of a startup who's under immense pressure. Everything is taking longer than he thought it was going to take. And we sat down and we talked about some opportunities he was running, and I hope I did coaching the right way, because he very quickly came to the conclusion, I have done everything wrong. I think I'm selling a business solution. I'm rushing people through to go and doing a technology test. And I'm now only talking to the technology people, and the person whose problem I was solving is nowhere to be seen. The technology people are delaying everything. Why do you think that is? And then he went, oh, duh, because they don't care. He was not, back to your under pressure, following through on everything he was trying to tell people to do. If everyone's watching what he's doing, they will do what he's doing. They won't do any of this fancy training theory methodology that he'd invested in. But so we said, you got to buy into this. Can I say, really, I'm talking to an awful lot of people who are, to put it bluntly, scared witless, right? They're under pressure. Their companies are under pressure. They're being told, hey, in the old, the old L&D world, training is the first thing to be cut. But we want our people to be more productive. They are sitting there and they're being offered, well, you can get AI to go and build training courses. Give it all your presentations and it will deliver you a digital learning experience. And if I do that and I follow LinkedIn and it says, well, look, they said do that, I'm safe. Why would anybody who's listening here actually want to take themselves out of that safety? How do we convince them that if they want competitive advantage, they have to change? And by the way, if they convince themselves, it's easy to convince other people.
Yeah, the thing is, you have to look at what conditions that actually change the brain. None of that is going to do anything any differently than what you've got today. Okay? It's just not. Why is AI and putting all your stuff in AI going to mean that any salesperson is going to change their behavior? It doesn't.
So I've got a new training course.
Well, we've just proved you know that doesn't work.
I know that.
I also believe they do too. It's just easier and safer not to rock the boat, right? But that's why people will turn around and say training's the first budget to go, because to be fair, it's never delivered anything. Deliver something, right? Do it differently. Show the value of what you do and how habitually it's changed how your organization works. If you don't ever want to be the first budget to go, you've got to prove delivered value. Delivered value isn't likes. Delivered value is not thumbs up after a training course and happy people. Delivered value is habitual change.
Okay. How do I de-risk it? I mean, because there is a level of, trust me, Ginny's a doctor, and she can explain the science. How can I de-risk it?
You are never going to be able to de-risk it to such an extent it doesn't matter, because it's always going to feel uncomfortable. Change is studying uncomfortable. You will not like it. Sorry.
Yeah, but no. Change is uncomfortable, but
you have to feel comfortable with not knowing everything, with not being able to control everything, because you can't be in the situation where because all you're doing then is after predictability. Doing something new is not predictable, right? And here's
okay.
Really
you go. Then I'll go.
If it was logical, if you could make it feel safe, certain things wouldn't happen. I'm going to give you some statistics. 97% of abused women who've been seriously abused, as in ended up in hospital, done this, never leave their partners. So the risk of being hurt, the risk of being practically killed, is less risky than the risk of going into an environment you've never been in before, even if everyone tells you it's safe. You cannot de-risk change. You cannot make it feel comfortable with people. And actually, if you did, it's not working, because you're not asking your brain to do something different. You will feel uncomfortable.
I'll feel uncomfortable. And I'll embrace that.
Okay.
My de-risking is, there's so many things I could be changing or would like to change.
Yep.
How do I identify, and this goes back to what you and I have spoken about right from the beginning, how do I identify those things that I can tell you today will fail because these conditions, so a bit like you've just used your percentage there, we could go and talk to all of these abused women and say, you really need to, leave your husband, and they won't do it. We know, but if we know that, then the way we approach it will be different.
Totally. So basically what you do, it's a diagnosis. It's a very simple, easy way of going, tell me what you're doing, all of the actions you're doing, all you're doing, tell me what you want people to do, and we can literally tell you if that's going to work, right? Because It has to meet certain criteria to work. So you can rock up with any training program you want and go, here's my training. This is the thing I want people actually to do differently. Because that's where I would start. You can do it with something you want to try, or you can do it with something you've already deployed and going, we're here. Because the conditions for success in the human brain are exactly the same. Whether you wanted those women to leave their abusive husbands, or you want to lose 10 stone, or you're going to die, the whole thing, the conditions are exactly the same. What you've got to do is evaluate it before you start. So I don't know, I was trying to work out a good way of doing this. It's a bit like you keep trying to bake a cake, and it never rises. Okay, so what you do is you analyze all the ingredients and go, and you've been using plain flour. I know it says flour. What it means is it should be self-raising flour, right? But you didn't know that because you're not an expert at making cakes, even though you've always done it this way. So it's this. There is a simple set of criteria you can evaluate any training against and go, that's it. Have I got everything covered? Yes or no?
And let me be clear, in my world, for training, I mean anything that influences the activities, the behaviours the salespeople make. So what we're saying is, and in the sales world, we've got our tools. So we've got our CRM system that, let's be honest, nobody uses. So we buy a new one because it's got more features that nobody uses. And now we've got our tech stack so that we're recording calls that nobody listens to. So what we can do is we can go understand why it's not working. There are some, and we've done this with people. So let's be clear. And there are some case studies out there of explaining to people why people don't use the CRM. But, especially when, and you came up with a great story of a CRM being positioned to collectively make everybody more successful, to make it easier to share, when working in an environment where you're rewarded as an individual. Therefore, that's completely counter to what you're being told the CRM is there for. Therefore, better not put anything there, just in case anybody figures out my secret sauce.
That's right. There's just a set of criteria you evaluate them all against, okay? And they are very simple and very straightforward, and we just evaluate it, and you can go, this will not work here, here, and here. We then go through a set of recommendations which says your human brains in your business look at it like this, therefore you need to do this, 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 and this.
When you came up, okay, with a great story of, but within that, how do we, I've tried to explain, and we've had a few people, so, we'll be honest with everybody. We've explained this to people, and we've had what a lot of people have. Yeah, in theory, I get it. Sounds too hard. Sounds,
They don't want to change. Basically, that's what they're saying. I cannot be asked to spend the time to look at something differently. My brain makes me feel better if I just do what I've always done, which is exactly what their salespeople are doing, which is exactly why their sales training courses fail, right? You are behaving exactly the same way. Just feel uncomfortable, right? That's how you are doing something differently.
So really, that's our message to everyone who's listening, which is, okay, guys, you want to make a difference, except it's going to be uncomfortable.
Oh, hugely. And it's a bit like, so if you were standing in the shower and you're going to turn it on cold, okay? It's uncomfortable. It's not going to kill you, but the amount of people who stand in the shower and go, oh, can't, and not today. Not now. I'll try it tomorrow. And when tomorrow comes, they don't do it. And when the day after comes, they don't do it. All you did is need to stand under a cold shower for 3.5 to 5 seconds, and not cold either, but 3.5 to 5 seconds, and you don't do it. That's exactly the same process, because your brain knows you're going to feel uncomfortable. It goes, well, I'd rather not feel uncomfortable.
Okay. And I can give you a real life example of that. Unfortunately, my wife has a neurological disease, which means she suffers, the medics call it chronic pain. She has a cold bath every day, and that has made a difference. But let me tell you, for anyone who's ever been on a call with me may have heard screams in the background, wondering what on earth's going on, and that's my wife getting in the bath, going, it's cold, ooh, and you hear her singing and whatever. But she's accepted, and it's made a difference. It still hurts, but to your point, she's rewired her brain that says, I can deal with it. The
And
reward is greater than the pain.
that's right. But the thing is, you have to feel uncomfortable. And no one's first choice is to feel uncomfortable. But if you want to lead change and you want to do it from the front and you want to actually do something differently, get in the cold bath.
Right. So our one of that, to those people who are listening, is good news is I'm not asking you to get in a cold bath. It does make a difference, but there we are. It's up to you. But what we are asking you to do is to go and say, let's go and look at the things that aren't working and ask ourselves why. And then we can work out a plan, which may be training. It may be something else that says, this is how we get the people to do the new things that we've been trying to get them to do, that they're not doing. Maybe they're lacking skills. It could be environmental. It could be any number of things. I don't know what the answer is, but until, you, the L&D people, broaden your minds and go, I need to look at it, you're just giving, the aspirin to go and solve the pain because you've always taken an aspirin, but that may not be the root cause of what's going on. Everything that you're training people, and it's not a training needs analysis. Please, don't think that what we're going to go and do there is go, where's their skills missing? It's far more broader than that.
It will literally be, when someone's brain sees this, are they going to do habitually what you've asked them to do? Yes or no?
And to put people's minds at rest, we are working with some software companies who only get paid if people use their software. And they've realized that what they were doing was old-fashioned change programs and adoption, and then wondering why the adoption dropped off after a period of time, and they had to figure out new ways to bribe people to log into the software. They're looking to us to go and say, can I make it this habitual change? Can I make it business as usual, that they see value in my wonderful bit of software? Because clearly they don't see that at the moment. And that's not a communications issue. It would be far deeper than
it's. And the thing is, if people are probably sitting there going, yeah, none of that works. The thing I will always remind people of is human beings have been doing habitual change for millennia, right? We invent things. We've been doing this for a very, very, very long time. Your brain knows how to do it. We just have to present it with the right conditions so it does it. And I'll go back. One of those right conditions is being uncomfortable. If you're not uncomfortable, you're not changing anything. So if you're sitting there and going, I'll just go back to what I'm doing normally, stop yourself. Why? Didn't do anything. Didn't create any change. If you really want to do it, you have to go first. Talk to us and feel uncomfortable, because I know I'm going to make you feel uncomfortable.
And I'm lucky. I love discomfort. I mean, that sounds really creepy. It's not meant to, but it's I don't like doing the same thing in the same way. And for those poor people,
very particular type of person, Mark.
Absolutely, yeah. And for those poor people who have to deal with me when I'm trying to tell them they're wrong, I'm a little bit of a bull in the china shop, which is why I need you to go and explain the reality, because I can't even do. Trust me, I'm a doctor. As I said to someone the other day, I have no idea what PhD actually stands for.
Yeah, well, usually it's, can I go and defend my argument in front of a load of people who might not believe I know what I'm talking about, which is technically what it is. But it really is. The only thing you need to ask yourself is, am I uncomfortable? If not, nothing's going to be different.
So, I watched far too many James May videos. And there's a whole thing there that he refuses to give a call to action. I mean, he gives a call to action, and I may give one of his calls to action. But what is it we want people to do as a result of listening to us for 45 minutes and thinking, my God, Ginny's top is really red, and what on earth is Mark wearing?
Well, that's
What?
nothing new.
Yeah, well,
I,
very true.
well, the thing is, I'll always go after I care about you as a person. So if you want to change anything, you have to feel uncomfortable, right? Change is not comfortable. You will not enjoy it. You will not
And
enjoy it till you've forgotten that what you're doing is actually change. So that's you as a person, and that's my wish for everyone, right? But if this was my job and I didn't want training, if we always knew training was one of the first budgets to be cut, I'd want to make sure that training was the last budget to be cut because it did something. And therefore, you've got
okay,
to change what you do today. Okay, so you've got to have the bravery to go, I'm going to prove that I'm the last budget you should be cutting, not the first.
so the challenge we want to set everyone is give us the challenge to go and support you to properly have that conversation. But only ask us in if you're then prepared to have that conversation. Otherwise, we're wasting your time, our time, and if I do ask you or Ginny asks you for money, you'll have great difficulty justifying it. So yeah, the other call to action, and I think especially in the troubled times that we're facing, my new call to action is love yourself, because if you love yourself, you'll be braver. Because
Yeah,
hey,
no, I really like that. I like that. Yes, I like being uncomfortable. I'm like you,
yeah, yeah,
right? I do
absolutely.
also recognize this makes us very, very odd and unusual, and for most people, it's really hard. Okay. It doesn't mean it's not great fun to do it when you're in there. Oh, we could go on forever. The what's it people will cut us off in a minute because we like doing this stuff far too much. But it's really
Absolutely.
good.
Yeah,
Enjoy
yeah.
it.
Absolutely. Have a bit of fun out there. We can help you have fun and discover things about your organization that maybe the organization doesn't know, or the organization knows, but just isn't prepared to admit that it knows. And my final thought to you, to anyone who's working in L&D or sales enablement, we all know the commission structures drive the wrong behavior. We all know it. We all talk amongst ourselves about it. And then we're surprised why we don't get cross-function sales and why we don't get collaboration. But we all know we get paid for what we do, not what other people do. So until we change that, I'm here to go and run you a training program on collaboration in the full knowledge it won't work, but it will be fun. So if that's what you want, I've run some great collaboration workshops. And yeah, they collaborate in the classroom. And then they go back to work, never to be seen again. Yeah, sad, isn't it? Anyway, we will take that forward. Also, I'm going to Ginny and I will be putting out a whole load of stuff about AI. Ginny's doing some fascinating work about getting AI to write its own CV, because it'll be quite interesting for you all to understand if it was a human being who you're asking for advice. And then you can ask
Or
yourself the
employing.
question, would I employ them? That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I did that thing for an AI. So understanding where AI has expertise, where human has expertise, and how you get better, higher quality decisions is where you need to be using AI.
So
To
we're
do
nothing
that,
if
you need
not.
to read its CV. So we'll be doing something about that
Yeah,
shortly, which is
yeah.
fascinating, by the way.
So reach out to us if you want to talk more. If you want to give us a challenge, give us a challenge. We are more than up for it. And we will then have another conversation in a couple of weeks' time about something or other that interests us and hopefully you. So, Ginny, thank you for asking me too many questions and making me reveal a little bit more about myself. Always fun. And to everybody, I wish you all a good day.
Yeah, enjoy the weather. Very British.